from a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA. This is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to get in those last days at the beach before winter without all that pesky hypothermia. And now, the podcast host who's got all the winter wear he needs to keep him and his faithful dog companion cozy, Pete Dominic!
Yes, indeed, Pico. You've nailed it once again. We talk about outdoor gear today with comedian J.L. Cauvin, who joins me for show number 700. I wish I could have made a bigger production and had a whole bunch of guests and done something, and maybe I'll invite some special guests to our hangout. I will this week, so count on that. But show 700, J.L. Cauvin. But let me just give you some advice here at the top. Winter is around the corner. It's going to be cold in most parts of America. And I just want to tell you, again, I think I recommended last year, but I got to do it again. Lined pants. You guys who are still wearing cotton pants or jeans or sweatpants or whatever you're wearing, I don't understand. You're really missing out on what can be a much more comfortable experience out in the bitter cold with lined pants. I've several pair, both cotton and like a nylonish outer shell, and then just like a fleece or soft fabric inner liner, and it just makes all the difference in the world. And I can't recommend lined pants higher. If you're cold in the winter, it's your fault, is really all I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. You can bundle up, and lined pants are just a miracle. So whoever invented them, go get yourself some. All right, lots to talk about. Let's get to the mailbag real quick. A lot of emails every day. I rarely read them on the air. I should. So many amazing listeners all over the country and all over the world. I'll tell you about Blair in France in a moment. But first, just want to read an email from Mandy, who is commenting on yesterday's show with Dr. Calvin's son. If you haven't heard it yet, Calvin's son was my guest yesterday's show. I was his lacrosse and soccer coach in junior high over 20 years ago. And he's gone on to live an amazing life, saving lives as an emergency room doctor, and traveled all over the country and started a travel company. Just a great guy. And Mandy emailed me from Idaho, where she lives with her family, and said, Pete, I loved today's episode with Dr. Calvin's son. I could relate to so many of the topics you guys covered. I've been a youth sports coach for 20 years now. I started coaching ski racing right after college in 2001, and I've coached middle school track for almost 15 years. I also draw heavily upon my own feelings of middle school trauma, the bullies, the insecurities when I interact with the kids. Although I'm not as funny as you, I do try to incorporate humor into every practice. And I love hearing about what my former athletes are up to. Many of them are full-grown adults or are starting lives and families of their own now, which is wild because I knew them best as gangly baby giraffes when they were on my team. And so she went on to talk about her own experience and said that she loves listening to the podcast. It's both affirming and educational in ways that very few things are. Keep up the good work. Mandy, thank you very much for that email, for all of your email and support over the years. Really wonderful person. She's a woman person out there in Idaho, and very happy to have her listening to the show. Thank you. Also, my boy Dominic out there in Tennessee writes to me at standupwithpete@gmail.com. My wife and I are taking a much-needed vacation in Orange Beach, Alabama. He sent me vitamin N, and it's amazing. It was in yesterday's subscriber post and email. But he added, I'm going to take a picture of me reading Supreme Myths on the beach and send it to Eric Siegel via Twitter. He's such a nice guy. One of the reasons I listen and subscribe to you, you introduced me to your friends, and I'm richer for it. Thank you. Love everything you do, brother. Dominic, that made me cry, made me a little weepy. It was very kind of you. And I mentioned this guy, Clark Blair, who is a longtime listener of the show, and just reached out, and he told me a little bit about this, I think, before in the past, but he and his wife picked up, and he was in the Peace Corps when he was a young man, but he and his wife, he had a whole career, an interesting career, but they moved to France in, I think, 2016, and they're renovating a place, and they sound amazing, and the place looks amazing. So I'm inviting ourselves, all of us, to France to go hang out with Clark and his wife. And if you want to learn more, if you're going to be in France, you've got a friend, go to blairsinfrance.com, where he started this whole blog to report about their travails in moving to France. It's a really fascinating story and guy. And I'm looking. I should have him on the show, and he can talk about it. Sounds like a really interesting guy. All right, that is the mailbag. just some correspondence from folks. I want to try to do that more. I love sharing your voices, your feedback, your criticisms, ideas, and compliments. Oh, speaking of ideas, Heather emailed me, and not to take anything away from Heather, but a lot of people have made the suggestion that I should have a place, a bookstore, a library, a place to put all of the books of the authors that join me. And she is so right. What's the best way to do that? I'm going to put that out to the Stand Up with Pete Dominic Street team. And if you want to be involved in helping make the show better, it's a lot of grassroots, a lot of crowdsourcing here from listeners and subscribers. Join us, standupwithpete@gmail.com. If you're not a listener, sign up now, standupwithpete.com. And now I want to get to some of the big news from yesterday. There was a lot of it, of course. Major escalation in the war in Ukraine, Russia escalating the conflict in what the New York Times is referring to as Russia's biggest missile assault in months, targeting multiple cities. Vladimir Putin tied the attack to a bombing of a bridge to Crimea and vowed that more strikes would follow if Russian targets were hit again. At least 11 civilians were killed in these attacks. And there's so many more headlines coming out of that conflict. I could fill up the next hour covering them all. In far less important news, yet something getting a ton of coverage, Kanye West's string of anti-Semitic tweets, which resulted in his Twitter account being suspended, has been heavily poured over and talked about. I mentioned it on last night's show. But let's check in with one of the most influential black men in radio. A very controversial guy, I think. I certainly don't love a lot of what he says, but he's on that show, The Breakfast Club. Charlemagne the God is what he goes by, which bothers me a little bit. Maybe I'm missing something, but okay. Here he is speaking out about Kanye West's string of anti-Semitic tweets and more.
According to these sources, he's been alienating confidants by using the same rhetoric in private that led him to publicly endorse the White Lives Matter slogan, and also the tweets that he put out. His friends are at a loss to find someone who can get through to his destructive behavior.
Yeah, how do you as a black man wake up and choose white supremacy? Like Kanye West woke up and just chose to be a Nazi one day. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and tells you how much he loves Hitler. Like in the span of a week, you use your energy to spew anti-black slogans and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Like you might as well call him KK Kanye at this point.
KK Kanye, says Charlemagne the God. I hate this whole thing. Jewish and black Americans have long united together in advancing civil rights is a point I saw made on social media, which I think is the point that we should continue to make. Of course, there's been conflicts between all ethnic groups in America and black folks and Jewish folks in the United States. But I like to look at the positive narrative of this and yet still be honest about the conversation. Unlike Candace Owens, who had this to say, I'm going to play it for you. Trigger alert on Kanye West's anti-Semitic tweet, which was, again, I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going to go Defcon 3 on Jewish people. The funny thing is I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jew. Also, you guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda. Okay, well, here's Candace Owens.
That was the tweet. And people subsequently demanded that the tweet be taken down for anti-Semitism. Now, if you are an honest person, you did not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. You did not think that he wrote this tweet because he hates or wants to genocide Jewish people. This does not represent the beginning of the Holocaust. That's if you're an honest person, you'll admit that. You will admit that, right? If you're an honest person, when you read this tweet, you had no idea what the hell he was talking about. I had no idea when I read this tweet what the hell he was talking about.
Well, that's part of the problem. And I'm not saying that he wants to kill all the Jews. I'm just saying he wants to nuke them. Defcon 3.
This tweet inspired questions, not answers. First and foremost, what is Defcon 3?
It's a typo. It's just a typo.
Did he mean Defcon 3?
Obviously.
Which would be a military defense position, not an offense, for those of you that are offended.
Well, that's a weird defense. That's a weird defense of the argument. But go on.
Military defense position. Is he tweeting this because he's reading the Newsweek headline calling him an anti-Semitic? Is he angry because he can't?
Wait, would that be okay if someone called him anti-Semitic and then he tweeted the most anti-Semitic thing you could? Is that an appropriate reaction?
Believe that he's not free to talk about people in his life who happen to be Jewish, right? Without being accused of anti-Semitism. Is he saying, I'm not going to shut up and I'm going to keep tweeting and I'm going to keep calling these people out, referring to his friends that he feels slighted by? Is he talking about Jared Kushner and Josh Kushner? If you're a liar, you'll say, I know I was scared, Candace. I actually thought that Kanye West was going to launch a military strike in Israel.
No, see, nobody thought that. Nobody thought he was going to launch a military strike. You couldn't think, no one can think that because he doesn't have any nuclear weapons. I mean, he's wealthy, but he doesn't have any nuclear weapons. So I'm not going to let you get away with that one, but go on.
Because that's the reaction. Like when I woke up and I looked at the headlines, the reaction was like Kanye West had gotten together a military strike and it was going to go forward in the morning time in Israel. That was... No,
I don't think anybody reacted with that. I bet you they didn't. I bet you nobody said anything like that.
That was the reaction that was met with this tweet. Now, once again, I want to make this very clear.
Wait a second. It's going to be very clear. Here comes a disclaimer. Something nice about Jewish people.
It's not a defense of his tweet. This is an open question, which never seems to happen anymore. It's like you cannot even say the word Jewish without people getting upset. In the same way that you're not allowed to say black anymore. In the same way that if you talk about the struggles of black Americans and you talk about the people in black America, like Patrisse Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter, who are harnessing emotions to enrich their pockets, right?
Okay. All right. Well, you can actually say Jewish and black. I just did it. Jewish, black, Jewish, black. It's the words around the word Jewish or black that you have to be more thoughtful about if you are one of the most popular and influential people in the world. That's the thing about people like Kanye West and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and so many other people who have huge, massive followings and say very, very dangerous, horrible things. It's different when they do it than when some anonymous Twitter account with no followers does it. That's for sure. But that person should be penalized as well if they decide they want to go Defcon 3 on the Jews. Even a person with no followers should have their account suspended for saying that. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you on that. I do want to play just 2 clips from last night's debate in Ohio where J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan clashed in a Senate debate there, and there was some real humdinger zingers. And if you didn't see it, this is one of the big ones that got a lot of attention. This canned line by Tim Ryan, which I liked it.
Just a few weeks ago in Youngstown, on the stage.
Oh, I should mention this was spliced. Somebody edited in the sound that Tim Ryan is referring to when he says just a few weeks ago, and he's referring to this moment here.
Donald Trump said to J.D. Vance, all you do is kiss my ass to get my support.
Support. J.D. is kissing my ass. He wants my support. I'm 18 points up.
After Trump took J.D. Vance's dignity from him on the stage in Youngstown, J.D. Vance got back up on stage and started shaking his hand, taking pictures, saying, hey, aren't we having a great time here tonight?
Are we having a good time? Is it great to have the president back in Ohio?
I don't know anybody I grew up with. I don't know anybody I went to high school with that would allow somebody to take their dignity like that and then get back up on stage.
Yeah, well, I didn't get to that canned line. Here, where's the canned line about him kicking ass, not kissing ass?
I'm for Ohio. I don't kiss anyone's ass like him. Ohio needs an ass kicker, not an ass kisser.
There it is. Yeah, that's the line I was talking about. But anyway, there were a lot more good lines. I really thought from what I saw on social media, and unless I missed it, that Tim Ryan did a great job and really beat the hell out of J.D. Vance, including in this moment, which is about a minute long.
On January 6th, we had 140 cops, United States Capitol Police, get injured during the insurrection when they tried to overthrow the government. Beat them upside the head with lead pipes, spray them with pepper spray. The one video we saw, the cop got jammed into the door. Right? J.D. Vance raised money for the legal defense fund of the insurrectionists. This is the kind of extremism, J.D., that we wholly reject. You have video posts. Don't even try to deny it. We got your Twitter posts and everything else. Everybody's seen it. He said, Help these guys with their legal defense fund. Now, can you imagine one guy saying out of one side of his mouth he's pro-cop, and out of the other side of his mouth, he's raising money for the insurrectionists who were beating up the Capitol Police? The one guy he tried to raise money for got 4 years in prison. This is ridiculous. I'm not taking a back seat to you. I brought $500 million back to fund police in Ohio.
Well, there you go. The stakes couldn't be any higher in Ohio and in the Senate. This is such an important race. Adam Parkamenko, who I love on Twitter, and I also love his daily email. Today's big stuff, which he writes with Sam Youngman. Got to get them back on the show. Anyway, Adam Parkamenko tweeted, I cannot stress this enough. There is a Democrat running for U.S. Senate in Ohio. He is winning in the polls. His Republican opponent, J.D. Vance, says rape is inconvenient. Ask everyone you know to spread the word and help out this race and send Tim Ryan to the U.S. Senate. Yeah, well said, Adam. And if you're in Ohio, let us know what we can do to help you. And you know what? One more clip, which Dave Rothkopf tweets, Hillbilly Elegy. That's the name of the book that J.D. Vance wrote. Hillbilly Elegy. Tim Ryan buried Vance tonight. And here's this one more clip of Tim Ryan perfectly painting J.D. Vance as the extremist he has campaigned to be.
Kill and confront the extremist movement, of which J.D. Vance, unfortunately, is a part of, right? Who says that the president of the United States is intentionally trying to kill people with fentanyl? Who says that the election was stolen? J.D. Vance does. Who runs around with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who wants to ban books? You're running around with Lindsey Graham, who wants a national abortion ban. You're running around with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's the absolute looniest politician in America. This is a dangerous group, and we do need to confront it. And that's why I'm running to represent the exhausted majority, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, candidates against the extremists.
We are going to
back to Stand Up with Pete Dominic. That's where we're going. Okay, well, that's from last night's debate. If you're in Ohio, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm thinking, Derek, who else is out there in Ohio? Give me an email, standupwithpete@gmail.com, or a tweet, or whatever. Just contact me. All right, coming up, a hilarious and brilliant conversation with the always awesome JL Cauvin. But first, I want to tell you that rapid growth for your business doesn't have to come with growing pains, folks. When you have ambitious hiring goals, you need a partner. You need a partner to help you get there. You need Indeed. You see, Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on all kinds of different job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, and I certainly do, Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. And in this minute I'm talking to you, 16 hires will be made on Indeed, according to their data. When you sponsor an Indeed post in the U.S., you're 3 times more likely to get a hire. The right candidate is doing everything they can to find you, and if you use Indeed, you can be sure you're doing everything you can to find them too. Because Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applicants from resumes in our database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/standup to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions do apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. I don't know why I went British. I just thought it'd be different. All right, we're about 19 minutes in, and I want to get to my guests. How about it? Sorry it took so long, but hopefully that was interesting, entertaining, and enlightening, as well as informative. My guest today is JL Cauvin. You know, JL was born in New York City to an Irish-American mother and a Haitian father. He's the second of 2 children. His parents decided he was enough, probably because he weighed 10 pounds, 7 ounces at birth. Oh my gosh, I'm just reading from his bio. Let's see, what else? He went to Williams, graduated there in 2001. JL attended Georgetown University Law Center, and it was also during his time in Washington, D.C., he began to perform stand-up comedy. In his bio, it says his act is incredibly diverse, which I think is true. It's led to 6 stand-up albums, which is pretty amazing. He's also released 2 albums as Donald Trump, to 2017's Fireside Craps, and an entire album as Donald Trump, which hit number 1 on the iTunes comedy chart, in 2020's Fireside Craps, The Deuce, which went number 1 on both Amazon and iTunes comedy charts and broke the top 40 in iTunes overall album charts. You can hire him right now to do any number of his impressions or to do stand-up comedy on Cameo if you want. He's going to be headlining this weekend with me as the host. I asked him to headline our fundraiser for my local Democratic Party, the Clarkstown Democrats. It's in Nyack, New York, this Saturday night at 8 o'clock. If you want to come, we would love to see you. Me, JL, and his other comedian, hilarious as well, Andy Pitts. It's going to be a great show. That's Saturday night. If you want to come, I will hook you up with the info. standupwithpete@gmail.com. But JL is also performing on Friday night, this Friday the 14th, in York, Pennsylvania. And he is also in the Bronx in New York at the end of the month, October 26th. You can see him in Princeton, New Jersey, the 28th, the 29th as well. Then he's going out to Michigan, Ann Arbor, November 11th, 12th, and up in my hometown of Syracuse at the Syracuse Funnybone November 23rd, and December 17th at the Emmeline Theater in Merrimack, New York. You can see him in all those dates, jlcauvin.com for more dates. Follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube, and here we go. All right, JL Cauvin joins me now, and at least 2 listeners at last night's Hangout said they were going to be coming to your York, Pennsylvania show. Shout out to Francis and Tom, who are going to be there. When is that?
That is Friday, this Friday, the 14th.
Okay, great. And then I'll see you on the 15th when you are headlining the fundraiser for my local Democratic Party, which I'm involved with. And I just want to publicly say thank you very much. I don't know how much money you're giving up to do that, but we're very happy to have you. I hope we can get an audience.
Yeah, me too. Obviously, it'll be Metro North tickets and New Jersey Transit tickets.
That'll be covered. All that'll be covered.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, yes.
All right.
Your travel will be covered, and hopefully we'll sell out, and we'll give you a couple bucks to make it worth, not completely insult you.
Oh, good. Well, but if you did, it's just par for the course if I end up feeling insulted after a gig.
Oh, well, you're going to feel. I'm planning on insulting you, whether or not you are insulted. So,
and I've actually slapped the label on that show on my website: organic, cage-free, trauma-free, no shaming of any marginalized groups.
Oh, how generous! Thank you for doing that for us. Yeah,
that has nothing to do with any conversations we might have had immediately before recording.
There was some concern. Somebody found out that JL was going to be the headliner, and someone reached out to me saying they were offended by a joke of his. And I responded flip and immaturely to that person by telling them to book their own comedy fundraiser with whatever comedians they wanted. But these were mine, and I stood by you, even though you are you were, I don't know, it was fat shaming. That's what you were accused of.
And like an Asian man in Tiananmen Square, you got in front of that presumably tank-shaped woman and said, "You will not pass."
Even more fat shaming right here on the podcast. You have a lot to say, as always, so I'm very happy to talk to you. I appreciate that you're doing that gig. It's going to be a lot of fun, but there's plenty of things I want to discuss with you. First and foremost, just a little bit of politics. Can we get your thoughts?
Sure. Not billionaires? I thought we were going to talk about the guy from Patagonia.
Oh, you want to do that? Okay.
I didn't want to make a profound comment off mic. That's why I stopped myself.
So the Patagonia founder is also a philanthropist. He's a billionaire philanthropist. I'm going to look up his name and stuff. And this came up because I like Patagonia, and you have my Patagonia hat from the last time we saw each other, and I left it there at your show. So what do you want to say about this guy or billionaires?
Well, I found the guy's story to be incredibly refreshing. And I know you were saying your dad sent you and your brother the articles indicating, hey, see, some billionaires aren't bad. Now, you can obviously make the argument that anybody who reaches a billionaire threshold of wealth, there should be just a tax that immediately renders you not a billionaire.
Yes.
And I can appreciate that argument. But the Patagonia guy, much like a Bill Gates, in my opinion, I do draw a line sometimes between billionaires who simply made products that lots of people wanted, and people who sort of manage money and play with other people's lives and accumulate wealth. I think you can draw one distinction that way in terms of, I mean, you can't, I mean, you may think it's not, you may think they're both over the line, but clearly you shoot somebody in the head and you bump into somebody and knock them over a cliff by accident. You've killed people in both circumstances, but one is not as bad as the other.
I don't like that, but go ahead.
Well, I just think that
Yvon Chouinard, the billionaire founder of Patagonia, said a couple weeks ago he's giving away the company to a trust that will use its profit to fight the climate crisis. Sir, background. Yeah. Go ahead.
And I just, like, what I found when I read the article, like some of the quotes, he was basically some guy who was like, I did not want to be a billionaire. I didn't set out to be a bit, like, this has never been the goal. And, but if you're successful, I mean, sometimes you make a lot of money. And I don't know. I thought it was a really good story. And I thought it's ironic that everybody I see, almost everybody I see wearing Patagonia is somebody who would probably hate this guy. It's all like finance bros in Midtown wearing Patagonia vests.
Yeah. That's a big thing. They wear Patagonia vests, and I saw them every day when I would go get lunch at Sirius XM, and it would be all those douchebags from whatever.
And my favorite is in the summer, and I feel like I have seen this in the summer in Midtown, where I'm talking heat wave level temperature, but there'll always be one or two guys, and I'm sure they have the AC cranking, but will be going out to get their lunch in a button-down shirt and khakis and a Patagonia vest. And I go, sir, it's 94 degrees and humid. Are you afraid the women won't know that you work in finance if you are out of the full uniform? But yeah, I just found it interesting because I'm not as hardcore on the billionaires shouldn't exist, simply because sometimes you make something that, Bill Gates obviously has done a lot of good with his wealth and obviously created something that the world wanted, needed, benefited from in terms of his programming.
Yes. I mean, I think, there's a lot to say about that, but
I guess that wasn't as profound as I thought. That's kind of a soft opening for the show. That's not the usual guns blazing sort of opening.
That's
I usually bring.
I mean, listen, I've known about that company and its founders and the Tompkins, who are friends with them and founded other fashion companies in the North Face, because they have always invested in land conservation. That's where I came to them and worked with some of the people who ran the huge plots that have been conserved in South America. So that's why I support that company, because I've known about it for a while. Plus, their gear is awesome.
Yeah.
Not because I'm a douchebag finance guy. All right. So then let's do politics, shall we? Midterm elections?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Some 20-some days away. Let's just take a look at some of the Senate races that are getting a lot of attention because their candidates, Republican candidates, nominees, have done such egregious, embarrassing, formally compromising things have been found out about both Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz that it would have sank anybody in any race in prior times. But now it's arguably a boon for them just because, as a lot of people are saying, it's about winning and losing. Cruelty is the point. We don't care if the red team guy murders people. Doesn't matter. He's on the red team. If he's murdering puppies, doesn't matter. He's on our team. What are your thoughts first on what we've learned about Herschel Walker, JL?
It's hard for me at this point. I mean, if Herschel Walker wins that Senate seat, my sympathy will probably go out the window. But Herschel Walker strikes me as not to use a Trump term, a low IQ individual who also might have some actual brain damage.
Right.
And he is being propped up. It's almost like a punch drunk boxer being propped up by his mob corner, because he's supposed to take a fall in the 10th, or he's not supposed to lose the fight. And so you prop him up and just like push him out into the ring. That's what it honestly feels like that. Like the man has no business. I don't know. Is he a terrible human being, a flawed human being? I can't even make that judgment anymore. Like he doesn't feel like somebody competent enough to stand trial if he was fucking convicted of a crime. And I'm only half kidding.
Yeah.
And so
it's almost like they're exploiting him. in his family?
It's almost like exploitation. I might even call it blaxploitation is what they're doing. But
a lot of I had a similar take, and last night at the hangout, like several of the black folks that were there were like, he's got agency. He knows what he's doing.
Sure. No. I don't think it's not weekend at Herschel's where they're just literally bringing out a dead body and going, say something stupid. But I also don't think this is and like I said, he very well might have been an abusive, bad person his whole life. It might not have to do with football injuries or being an idiot or something like. So it's not. He's not blameless. But it's at this point where I'm just watching it, going, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is going? Like, what is going on? Like, if like I feel like Warnock, if it were a little league game, Warnock would just be like, mercy rule. We're going home. We won the election. This is a joke. Except America's the joke now, and Herschel Walker is very competitive in this race. And much like it feels almost like as a Republican Senate candidate, it's kind of like being a right-leaning comedian. The best thing that can happen to you in lieu of having good material or good policy is the left hating you or canceling, quote unquote, canceling you. That's the brand. The brand is you're nobody until the left hates you, and then you're a hero. And nowhere in between is there policy talk, or to keep the comedy analogy, jokes. It's just, oh, you've been canceled. Okay, now you're in. Now we defend you to the death because you have been deemed unworthy or bad by the left, no matter how valid the label is. So it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic that, you know, I've pointed this out, but Raphael Warnock, I love the Republicans every January can't stop beating off to generic Martin Luther King quotes. And then they go, why can't there be more, you know, whatever happened to the good ones like Martin Luther King? Well, hey, in Georgia, we're running the pastor of Martin Luther King Jr.'s church. No, fuck him. He sucks. Not him. We're not talking about him. We're talking about the dead ones. That's like my joke from Twitter about Death of a Salesman, where I'm like, and obviously, yes, beneath that is probably a lack of knowledge on the part of the right-wing base. But nobody's complaining about the black reboot of Death of a Salesman because it's about a loser who kills himself. So they're like, no, we definitely need that kind of diversity.
Well, to be fair, I don't know if I push back on you or somebody else. You're talking about the Broadway show. Yeah. It's on Broadway and it's a black cast. Mm-hmm. And my point was, I don't think anybody's outraged by that because they didn't see the original. They don't care about theater.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
they
beyond
don't know
the joke,
it exists.
Of course, I think that's your answer is obviously much closer to the truth. But I still don't think they'd care even if they knew, because it's like a sad it's not a celebration or a cool role. It's right. Like it's like, oh yeah, well, no, seeing black people struggle. Now, I'm all for that diversity. Now I
think I think Arthur Miller would be rolling over in his grave, but I don't.
Probably because he looks like such a weakling in that movie Blonde on Netflix. I think that's what would be upsetting him. Well, why am I the only guy who's not abusing Marilyn Monroe?
Arthur Miller, a great American playwright. I don't know if he was and how he felt about racial diversity. I kid Arthur Miller, who died in 2005. Okay, so that's a great analysis of Herschel Walker. What do you think about this story around Dr. Oz, that there were experiments being done that he was apparently overseen? It's hard to know. It wasn't in the room killing dogs himself, but he certainly knew about it, I think it's fair to say, according to the reporting. That would be a big major campaign sinking. JL, do Democrats and liberals have more of a fondness and care about puppies and dogs than conservatives? I don't think so. I think we like different dogs, but we all love dogs.
Here's what I will say. I think the people who love dogs on both sides will defend their dogs, treat them right, be good pet owners, you know. But I will say this. My dog was adopted from Kentucky via a shelter in Tennessee. Everybody I know this is a small sample, but everyone I know in my friend and peer group who has adopted a dog has gotten it from the South. And I had a joke about it being like sort of an underground rail, or like a canine underground railroad where you escape the rural ignorance of the South for, a gilded cage in the North. But I talked to the woman at the adoption place in Tennessee, and she had said, I love the South. I'm native to Tennessee, but truthfully, the culture, there's way too many people who just sort of, they want a puppy, but then they just think, well, it's an animal and I'm done with it. So like, go out and be free, like, get out of here. Like, go, don't need you anymore.
They let their dog go, just go.
Yeah. Like just,
like it's a deer they just brought back to good health.
Right. And that's probably in nicer cases. Obviously my dog was clearly abused and whatnot, but so I think maybe culturally, when you step outside pet lovers, that maybe you would find the red states would be a little less woke when it comes to animals. That's just my guess based on how many of these adopted dogs seem to come from the South, but that's anecdotal evidence. What I do think speaks poorly about Pennsylvania, and I'm thinking about opening up with this in central Pennsylvania. If the Pennsylvania Senate seat swings on Dr. Oz using the term crudité instead of veggie tray, that's not a real flex for Democrats in Pennsylvania. It's more of a condemnation of the state in total. Like, you either vote for a Trump ass kisser or a guy who doesn't use fancy French words for vegetables. And it's like, is this why the people in Philadelphia boo Santa Claus and ate feces after they won the Super Bowl? Is the whole state red and blue just really brown poo color?
Who ate poo?
I remember reading a story after the Super Bowl that some guy, like in a stunt or something, like had eaten shit. And I used it as my opener the next time I was in Philly. I said, I thought you guys were getting sort of nice. This area around the club seems to be very farmers markety now. But then I read that a guy ate shit after the Super Bowl win. And I said, oh, that's Philly. They're back.
Well, there's been a lot of references to defecation. There's been a lot of scatological behavior amongst the acolytes of Donald Trump. People love to comment on how many of them, or how much shit there was left in the Capitol building after the insurrection. And there does seem to be like just kind of a lower level of sophistication amongst Trump supporters. I mean, I kind of want to go to a Trump rally at this point, because I think they've weeded out a lot of people. Like, I really do wonder if it's the lowest.
Brain trust from the MAGA rallies is no longer there.
You look at all those comedians like Jordan Klepper or the guys from the Midas Touch. They all do great work. They're really funny. I think they're great. But like, they're selecting what clips, what people. I used to do that exact job for CNN, and it was obviously different. But like, you edit in. I tried to be fair, but I mean, are they all like that? Are they all QAnon conspiracy theory people at this point that, would follow the Trump anywhere into the Capitol and take a shit in it?
I think so. It's because at this point, and I watched this documentary series on Peacock, which was okay, but it's called Shadowland, and it followed a bunch of people sort of in the QAnon MAGA adjacent movement. And the thing they seemed to all have in common was they all struck me as losers. And I don't mean losers like you'd say in high school, like you're a loser. I mean, literally, like, life has not gone great for you.
Yeah.
And it's, at this point, it's sort of like, if you're going, because Trump is he's just doing the hits. He doesn't have new material. He doesn't have a new agenda. If you've been to one Trump rally, you've been to all of them. And yet, for him to be able to get thousands of people still in some random place to promote a Senate candidate or whatever, and have people sit there for like 90 minutes just to be part of it, it really feels like, and I use this example with respect, but sometimes you have conversations with a lonely older relative. And you get that, when I was in high school, I visited nursing homes for community service, and you realize at first that's weird, but then you just realize they just want, it's just the act of somebody showing up and talking about a TV show or a sporting event that gives them something to look forward to, that human connection, that connection to a younger generation. So on a real level, that's a real human need and something important. And I think there's lots of ways to get that. My thing is, if your way of getting that is a Trump rally, there is something morally broken in you, not just emotionally, because that's not a good person. That's not a good message. Like you may think in the show Daredevil on Netflix, I think it's on HBO now, but Kingpin, the big villain, doesn't realize he's the villain of his own story until like 8 episodes in. And it's a great realization because in his mind, he's a powerful business titan. He's rough, but he gets things done. But it was somewhere around, I don't know if it was episode 7 or 8, but there's this kind of cool realization, which I didn't see in a lot of comic book content, where it's like he kind of realizes he's kind of the bad guy and then embraces that. But at first he doesn't quite, in his perspective, he's doing X, Y, and Z because that's what that's his goal or mission, and he feels like it's justified. And I feel like the people at the Trump rallies will never realize that they're on, no matter what, they're right. They are on the right side of history and morality, and they're not at all. But their moral compass is broken, and a lot in their lives is broken. And I think the bigger the loser, the less malfunctioning your moral compass has to be. But if you're somebody who's like, oh, I'm a VP, like the January 6th people are garbage because a lot of those people were just, well, I hate immigrants and the changing face of my community, but I have a good job and a family and friends. Yep. I'm just a piece of shit. That's why I'm here.
No, I think that's certainly true of there's been so much journalism and investigation into who those people were, right down to the socioeconomics and their kind of their average salary of those arrested. And a lot of them don't have the grievance of they weren't doing well according to almost any subjective way of looking at your income. I mean, if you flew to the insurrection on a private jet, you shouldn't be complaining about taxes maybe, but or anything else, frankly, financially. But I think you're generally right about these people who showing up at the rallies and so on. Let me ask you about Trump's behavior. You're inside his head. You have actually done probably more than a few videos, parodies of Trump saying a thing, and then he later ends up actually saying either something as absurdly as close to what you said or dead on what you said.
Can I give you the most recent quick example?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I on my podcast, I think at least a year ago, I said, I didn't maybe use the percentages, but I said, no, excuse me, if they put together, no, I've talked to a lot of people.
Yeah.
If George Washington and Lincoln ran against me in the primary, I would beat them both, and I would beat them very badly. And I have great respect for them, but I would beat the crap out of them. And then, he said at a rally recently,
he said that, just that.
A very respected pollster told me that if Washington and Lincoln came out of the grave and formed a ticket, I'd beat them by 40%.
Yeah. Well, part of the truth of that is that if he were to run again, he would do the same thing he did in 2015, which was an absolutely, if you think about it, amazing thing that he did, which is he was on stage with 15 other people and he just destroyed all of them. And if Lincoln and Washington came back, he would just be like, he'd have a nickname for them and it would catch on.
They call him Gay Abe. They call him Gabe because he's gay and he's Abe. And George Washington, nice teeth. They're made out of... Now, I respect the fact that they're made out of slave teeth, but they don't look good. They actually look horrible. So we got bad teeth George and gay Abe.
Yeah.
Okay, is this who you think's going to take out? When they meet when Xi and Putin sit across from gay Abe and teethy George, Tooth George, the Tooth Fairy. How about that? That's the ticket. We're going to call them the Tooth Fairy ticket. And you think they're going to respect? You think they're going to respect George Washington and Abe Lincoln? No, they're going to say, who are these old people? They're practically skeletons. They've been in the ground for 200 years. They don't look very presidential. So no, not a chance. Not a chance. No respect.
Yep.
But I respect them.
Yep. And it would work. And they're done. And they're out. Lincoln and Washington are out. The Tooth Fairy ticket, gone. He wins. Now, can he? Let's play along for just one more moment. What are your thoughts? If Trump were to run again, whether it's DeSantis or anyone else that is being considered, would he be able to do the same thing? Would he be able to just...
Yes. He will win the ticket. And I'll say this. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine as I've been working on my Ron DeSantis sort of sour milk voice. Like, look, with the tornado, with the hurricane, it's a very, like, I have a little bit of phlegm and I'm a little bit nasally, but you don't want to hear, you don't want to hear this voice for too long. Okay. It's not pleasant. He doesn't stand a chance against Trump in the Republican primary, because what's going to happen is what I envision is a primary of Trump, Pence, Liz Cheney, and Ron DeSantis. Now, the entertainment value of that will be A+.
Yeah, no doubt.
Liz Cheney has no shot, and he will dismiss her, and she has no charisma. I find her lack of giving a shit mildly attractive, her apathy, but she doesn't have the gear to take out Trump in a shallow 90-second debate format. Pence doesn't have the guts, but I think he does have the polish. If he could use his evil for more evil, but he will try to be the adult in the room, which will fail.
Right.
And then DeSantis is the one with the most kind of aggressiveness. He's a smarter person than Trump. He has a better record in many ways to run on. If you're sitting in a Republican primary, you like DeSantis. If you're being objective, DeSantis's record will probably intrigue you more, and his electability will certainly intrigue you. But his voice sounds like sour milk, and that's going to be very. I could see Trump. I mean, if Trump wants to buy that off of me, if I can TM that, and Trump wants to write a check to call him sour milk DeSantis, I think it would end DeSantis, because you're picking on the thing that's worse. He'd call him short, dumpy, white boots, sour milk voice DeSantis. And then DeSantis, no substance can recover from that, because you'll be like, man, now that Trump pointed out, I'm overwhelmed by the irritating lack of charisma that Ron DeSantis has. Ron DeSantis should walk away with the primary. He should walk away, like, being totally objective. He should be the nominee. He has the best chance to win in a general election, if that's what matters to you. He has enough cruelty and Trumpiness that he can satisfy that base desire that the Republicans have. But Trump is a cult leader now. He's not just a political figure. He is sort of an infallible deity to these people. And once DeSantis has an opening. It's not like if DeSantis looked and sounded like Gavin Newsom, but had the same policy and cruelty and sarcasm. I think if you did one of those switches where they both piss in a fountain during a lightning storm and DeSantis goes into Gavin Newsom's body, that guy can beat Trump head to head. But not DeSantis as currently constituted. And the white boot picture, I assume you've seen it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be a shallow kind of political commentator, if I can call myself that, but that's horrible. You have to understand the optics and the population of this country.
I think he didn't get enough criticism, although I saw some criticism. He also had a fleece vest on, and it was like 85 degrees. And it's like,
well, he's probably trying to win over the finance Patagonia douche
what he was trying to do was show that he was out in the field responding to the hurricane by wearing that gear. Someone told him wear this outfit, and what he's found out is that he's become a meme, and it's not good.
And to be honest, he deserves it, not just because he's an asshole, but what a horrible, like, why are you wearing, DeSantis, somebody need to get fired. And I know that sounds dumb, but somebody need to get fired.
If you're tucking your jeans into boots, there's almost never a person or a place that is going to be a good look.
But here's who, you know what? If you are, here's who you need to be, John Fetterman could pull that off because he'd look like a WWF wrestler called the Fisherman.
Yeah, right. He looked like he knew what he was doing in the field.
Right. Like a big person can carry off sort of we're out in the elements kind of look. But Ron DeSantis is dumpy and
got a bad body.
The white, like if those were just gray boots or like green, your typical rain boots, But they were like bright feminine white. Sorry to genderize it or whatever, but like they look like women's boots. And if you are trying to project strength, especially in the uber fake macho world of GOP politics, knee-high white boots. Why are you wearing fuck me boots to the hurricane?
Do you think, speaking of, I wanted to ask you this, you just gave me the opening. Do you ever look at the conversation that people like me love to have about gender, masculinity and where we're at and why that's important, and how men behave and how we see ourselves and how we are struggling because of all these? Do you think that we ever on the left go too far with that? Are you ever like, oh, come on, like men have to be, because I don't think we do. I don't think we talk about it enough. And I think that these modern definitions are ridiculous. It just because it just doesn't really matter that much anymore for most reasons. And it's doing so much damage to young men and men our age because there are expectations about who you're supposed to be, and it sucks. It's not good. There shouldn't be at this point. And last week we heard Marjorie Taylor Greene criticize Pete Buttigieg for the transportation secretary for, emasculating. Oh,
that Pete Buttigieg. Okay, thank you.
Well, I only mentioned that it was such a strategic attack by her. He's the transportation secretary, also gay, and he's the one who's making us drive these feminized electric cars. I think it's a really important conversation. I just wonder if you thought that it ever gets, too far on the left or anything like that.
I think a lot of these conversations that occur sort of from the progressive left sometimes go too far in terms of let's focus on, like what you're saying is the GOP vision of masculinity deserves to be called out because it's almost cartoonish. It's almost like what they view as a real man or a real woman is like cartoonish. Like it's when things, but I can speak, I'll give you my own perspective just in my own life where I don't know if it's toxic masculinity, but I grew up in a home where both parents were there, but my mom was the main breadwinner and also had a bad temper. And sort of you almost got this mixed message of, yes, a woman can be the breadwinner and she will complain and lament having to be the breadwinner. And in my life, I have found in relationships, I remember somebody said to me a long time ago, but I was in a very good relationship, but there was a question of like moving, like somebody said, oh, are you guys going to move in together? And I said, well, I can't afford, an upgrade in place is not really in my budget. And I was like, well, if she has a good job right now, why don't you do? And I was like uncomfortable with having to rely. And now this is a younger me, but I was uncomfortable probably because of some sort of like the man should be the breadwinner feeling.
Yeah.
And I was in another relationship before that one where I was making less than the person I was with, and we did live together, and she like weaponized that at a certain point of like it basically said a real man should not be paying less, like said it blatantly.
Yeah.
Even though that was like the agreement, like the reason I moved in, it was like, oh, you don't make as much, but that's okay. Cause I was hesitant because I was like, it'll be a tough pull for me to be 50-50 at this place. So I've had these like personal experiences that make me maybe have to reflect on my own insecurities on that's a
pretty typical and fair one to talk about. And I think the idea of the wage that you earn compared to your female partner in this case, I think we're talking about, or any case, for me, I think that's fine to talk about and it's interesting to explore. But for me, I'll just say, you just made me think of mine. It's like my wife and daughters have lightly or heavily ridiculed me forever, less so now because I've gotten a little better, for not being like good at like home repairs, being handy. So I really learned a lot more. I'm still not great, but I'm so much better. And they almost look at me now as being, proficient. Dad, can you fix this? Yeah, I'll fix that. But for a long time, I did feel like they were putting that was my responsibility. And nobody else even has any interest. But I never really, it's not a burden, and it didn't trouble me, and I'm happy that I've gotten better. So I'm not too worried about it.
To flip that, I dated somebody for several years who had been in the Navy and actually was handy with shit. I found it attractive. Obviously, I also benefited from it. But
that was a guy.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so it doesn't really apply.
I was wondering why I was always anal. I was like, that's pretty adventurous for a lady to only go that route.
No, that was because he was a guy with a penis.
Fuck.
Yeah. You told me about that. It's weird that you didn't remember that was a guy.
Oh, wow.
And now
I had no idea I was so progressive.
And now we can't get back to your thoughtful story because I interrupted it with my dumb joke.
No, that was a good joke, I thought.
But the woman was handier than you were, and that made you feel what?
Like, it didn't make me feel emasculated. It made me feel like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
You bring more to the table.
Sure.
And she didn't look at me as like, I can't believe you can't do this. I think she probably liked that she could step up and do that.
See, that's
but somebody could, I think, I have often thought this, and this may not apply to your listeners. Obviously, this is a left of center sort of fan base and whatnot, and a forward thinking group. But I've always thought, I think if women were being totally honest, the average woman, not that there's any average women because they are like snowflakes and fingerprints, unique in every single way individually. But I think what the ideal man would be like somebody who's a good person, but comes from a lot of money so they can develop skills on their spare time because they don't have to go to a job 8 to 10 hours a day that limits their ability. They don't have to go to grad school to get the high paying job because they come from money. So they have a trust fund, but they're good people because they were raised by very good people, and they value working out, but they also, one of their parents was a pro athlete, so they don't have to spend all their time in the gym. There's a certain natural fitness to their body. So they spend most of their days learning languages, which they have a natural facility for.
I can't believe you're still going on this hypothetical person.
And working on mechanics, both because they have a good understanding of physics and they like hard labor and fixing things.
Yeah, I love this person.
And they're a light mocha, which is sort of I could trick my racist grandparents into thinking he's white with a tan. But if he meets my friends of color, they will recognize that he is somebody in the community generally. So I think that's really the perfect guy.
All I'm saying is that when it comes to relationships and feeling and the inadequacies,
so he just naturally does the masculine quote unquote things without making a big deal of it. Because he's just like into it.
He sounds like a real prize. There's no doubt about this fake person. But no, just when it comes down to it with relationships, it's to me and this day and age, whether it's two men in a relationship or two women or a man and a woman, the idea of whether it be gender equity or whatever you want to call it is, what does your partner bring to the table in terms of what do they, as you've kind of been saying, it's like, I've never washed the dishes in my house with my wife, like almost never. But my wife has never mowed the lawn. Like we keep track pretty well about how much we contribute, and we both contribute like an equal amount, I would say. Like we both do a ton of stuff in this relationship. And I think that is the only thing that should matter, not what an expectation of is, just that you're doing stuff, that you're contributing as much as you can with what you have, what you're able to do.
As long as you're not doing any child care, I completely agree with you.
Well, I always say like about that, like with my friends who have kids, like younger kids, especially now, like guys, they'll be like, I'm so exhausted because they're doing a lot of child care. And for me, when the girls were little, like Val didn't have an outside the house job, or she worked a few hours a week, but like she did all of the hard stuff. And right. I would say like cooking and taking care of the kids. And I did all of the fun stuff. So it was pretty easy. Yeah. Our kids were really easy for me. I never had to do all the things that are monotonous and hard. I was just Captain Fun. And I'm glad I recognized that and didn't take it for granted. But today's man is doing a lot of stuff for his kids, I think, usually.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I do find I'm writing some material. See, I'm not a parent, so I think sometimes people take it the wrong way. but I've written like this. I'm thinking about doing on TikTok like a If George Carlin Was Alive video series, because I've been working on a George Carlin impression.
Oh, good.
Just in time. And but I thought about the term co-parenting, where I'm like, is this what it is now? Divorced people, like they feel guilty, so they had to brand themselves with like a new term. Like, what were you doing when you lived together? Were you parenting separately? When you were all in the same house and married? Like, but co-parenting, it's just, I feel like, and things like girl dad. I'm surprised Republicans haven't done a hashtag boy dad, like to brand like teaching your son. I should get on that. I'm thinking about joining Truth Social, not under my own identity, but like pretending to be genuine. Like I'm going to share my Trump podcast with no hint that it's comedy, and just like this is.
Oh, you must do that. We all want you to do that.
Don't you think hashtag? I hear a lot about girl dads, and I respect it.
Yes.
But how about a shout out for the hashtag boy dad?
Yeah.
But then I feel like
boys, and it's the definition of that is men who raise their sons to be real men.
Right. I think that could actually catch on as a parody.
Yes.
And
for
then,
sure.
And then you just let the gay community get a hold of it and start changing it to like daddy boy and hashtag daddies and and then all of a sudden you've got this nice Twitter mix of like men hunting with their 3-year-olds and then like some guy with an erection in the next photo under boy dad boy or boy dad.
This is going to be good. This is definitely going to be good.
All right, everybody, you heard it here first. I'm going to get on Truth Social and start the hashtag boy dad.
I want to ask you what you think about the announcement from the Biden administration, the president himself, on marijuana. If you'd been arrested, or I don't know exactly how it's going to work, how it's going to play out, but with possession of marijuana, that's going to be expunged. And
to the 33 people with federal convictions for marijuana possession, I applaud them.
No, I was wondering about that. Have you read anything about it?
Well, I read today that it's like 6,000 people, and then that I don't think that includes Washington, D.C., because obviously the federal government is the local government for Washington, D.C., so it's going to be thousands of people just within Washington, D.C. also. So I think it's messaging. He's sending a message at the federal level of how he thinks marijuana should be treated. So it's real for those thousands of people, but it's symbolic, but meaningful.
But it's supposed to give the analysis. It gives cover to governors like Newsom and even some people are speculating that some red state governor might. It's a pretty popular issue at this point, and it's a pretty well understood issue at this point. I think that it would be a good thing even for red state governors, and certainly for someone like Hochul in our state, New York, or Newsom in California. So that's
my thought on this has always been that the government was dragging its feet, not out of morals, but because they wanted big business. And I'm not a conspiracy far left guy, but it just feels like they were waiting for like business to be in place before they were like, okay, now it can be legal now that we know people who can capitalize on it.
There's some truth to that, because I covered a lot of these back in the day. And, in California, when it was a referendum, I believe, like the alcohol and tobacco industry spent millions lobbying and donating to politicians so that they wouldn't do that, because they know exactly. I think pharmaceutical too, some of the, painkillers and stuff that we get addicted to.
Yeah.
They're all worried about cannabis cutting into their market, and so they did spend money on.
It should be legal. I don't really care. I might buy some gummies. I will say this: when I had knee surgery in March, and I was on Oxy, low dose, 5 milligrams, like the smallest pill, but it felt really good. And all I kept saying, I slept great for those 2 weeks when I was on Oxy, even though it was a low dose, because my body is a temple and it's pure and I didn't need a lot. But I kept thinking, I just want something that will make me feel like this once in a while, that isn't heroin.
Do you not drink?
I just don't. Now that I'm in a long-term relationship, drinking to me was really 90% of drinking is facilitating bar and party interactions. It's not something I do for just to unwind or relax, because I unfortunately I like cookies and like milkshakes and stuff. Like if I want something like some food or drink to make me feel better, it's like that.
Yeah, interesting. That's fun. I'm sure that's common. I'm sure there's also people who love both.
Yeah, I just keep wondering, like, I want to walk into one of these dispensaries in my near my where I live and just say, because now it's legal and there's plenty of legal places within walking distance of me. I just want to go, what'll make me feel like a little sleepy and a little relaxed? But I don't want to smoke anything. Like it'd have to be like a gummy.
Well, I could tell you that. But the fun thing is, I went into one of the New Jersey. We're talking about where you live in New Jersey, right? Dispensaries, and it's just all of the, and this is true in almost every state where they're legal. Those places now are like immaculate. You have to have so much capital to even open one, just on the interior design and square footage and space. Like It's like every cannabis store is like an Apple store, pristine, and yet it's betrayed by the people who work there looking a lot of like typical potheads. But also, I should say, the diversity of the employees at these places is hilarious. White, black, Hispanic, Asian, fat, skinny, old, young. I can say young, but also old, like old looking, Dick Cheney looking white guys that are like, what are you even doing here? And it's like the guy works at the weed store. It's hilarious because, as I've always thought, cannabis brings people together from all walks of life. Everybody likes it. Conservatives, liberals.
The real key, though, is the ownership of the stores.
Sure.
You know, and it always felt to me.
Well, they made a law in New York to own it. Sorry to interrupt you. You had to have been penalized for a marijuana conviction or know someone who has or be related to or something like that. It's pretty interesting.
And that's when you find your one bro at Morgan Stanley who got arrested in college. And you go, let's do this, bro.
You're right.
But to me, it's always been one of those things. I never had a personal interest or stake in this. It just always felt like, alcohol and cigarettes, like not as bad and perfectly legal with restrictions. Like cigarettes, are truly horrible. So it's always been, I think, once it became clear that it was, people liked marijuana and it became publicly okay. The delay, I think, was just waiting for my wealthy buddies to be in place to capitalize.
Right.
We can't just make it a free for all, because then people will just grow their own and not get arrested.
Yeah. Well, people are doing that anyway, of course.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What else did I want to ask you? What are you most scared of right now? Or you can give me a book review. I know that, and I wanted to ask you because you announced that I love that you do this. You read a whole book and then you share your thoughts on your podcasts, on social media, and you really do it. And you read some great books. I know you're reading Maggie Haberman's new book. So, which I know I figured people would. I agree with their critics. My friend Michael Cohen, who you probably know. Yeah. Well, I don't know him, but I'm a fan of his work and his time on your podcast. He'll defend her and others, but I know I'm not as vociferously maybe as some of her critics, but I think what she's holding out, that criticism of her holding on to stuff. I'm not particularly critical of her actual, kind of palace intrigue reporting. I think that's always going to exist, and I think she's done some good work. But I'm more like holding on to stuff that the public should know when you have a gig already at the New York Times and CNN, and you're making tons of money. I don't like that. I don't love that. I get the criticism, but I do get annoyed when people are like, "Don't give her money." It's like, I want to read the book. Like, I don't think I'm funding a hate group here. Like, I want to read the book, and I get the criticism, but it's like, this isn't. It's. I feel like some of it is a little overblown, but I understand most of where it's coming from. But they seem to save, maybe because she's at the top of the heap when it comes to chronicling Trump. Yeah. But these criticisms always seem to be the most harsh for her. Like Bob Woodward catches a little bit of it. Jonathan Martin and Alex Burns, I enjoyed their book. They caught a little bit. But when Maggie Haberman does it, it's almost like, you're the worst. Yeah, Carol Leonnig and Phil Rucker did a book. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I loved her book on the Secret Service. That was zero fail. Carol Leonnig? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I know she wrote it, but what are your? How far into the Maggie? I mean, for you,
I started it yesterday, so 50 pages.
For you, reading these books,
I read a lot.
It's a write-off.
I don't. The only ones I write off, as I know that's maybe a little tongue in cheek. The only ones I write off are the ones like when I bought Andrew Cuomo's book and Stormy Daniels' book, because those were solely. I could write these off, but I'm more ethical with my the ones I use as props for sketches, I write those off. But the ones I'm actually reading
I can't believe that you're that picky about like your write-offs. It's a totally legitimate thing for you to write off.
I'm like, I do the opposite. I go, well, I was going to read this book anyway. The books that I was not going to buy or read, I treat those as like comedy video props.
All right.
But yeah, I read one. The last one I reviewed on my Patreon was called Wilmington's Lie. I think I was reading it maybe the last time I was on the show. Incredible book, very timely. Won the Pulitzer in 2021 for general nonfiction. It's one of those books that, and I said it in the review, which was largely serious, but then got funny at the end. It's the kind of book, and I sort of drew this thread at the end of the review. I said, the people who should read this book probably won't read it. So what you want is schools to make them read it, because schools are there for a general idea of what you should learn, not to be dictated completely by each individual family's whims and politics. But now that's, as you know very well, school boards are under attack because of they don't want schools teaching things contrary to their own.
And you're talking about David Zucchino's Wilmington's Lie, the murderous coup of 1898 and the rise of white supremacy. Go ahead.
It's an incredible book, incredible history. Obviously, the Tulsa Massacre got an extra historical boost because of both 60 Minutes and Watchmen. But this I found more devastating because it was sort of a combination massacre and coup. It wasn't like we left this town. They took over the politics. And when he connects it in the final chapters of the book to current North Carolina or modern North Carolina, and when you read about the statues that are up of these people, now that you know the intimate, detailed histories of what they did, I am not one of those people. I'm one of those people. I don't give a shit one way or the other on Columbus. I'll be honest.
What?
No. I know there's reasons to be like, what the fuck are we celebrating Columbus? I occasionally have this thought, if I can be totally honest.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Well, he did sail across the fucking world in 1492. It was a different time, and it was definitely an act of important courage, whether or not he was a marauding conquistador piece of shit. That is still a major historical world thing. I do think it's blown out of proportion where it becomes this day of Italian heritage. I think that's a real...
Well, yes, there's way better things to celebrate and people to celebrate.
But as a historical figure and thing, 1492 is still a big, to me, and maybe you disagree.
Watching you apologize for Columbus is really something.
Maybe it's because people think I look Italian, and I feel like I have some need to defend.
It's a very weird hill to die on, Columbus Hill.
No, but it's not that's what I'm saying. I said I don't care either way. I understand people saying never celebrate it.
That's like people saying I don't care if you're gay. Either way, I don't care. Yeah, you do. Like I don't care about the issue. I didn't phrase that well. I don't care about the issue. I don't think about that. Well, you should. I don't really give a shit about Columbus either. I think the idea that we even talk about him is weird, but you're giving him credit for being a brave sailor. It sounds like.
Kind of.
Okay.
That's why we know. That's why we know him in the first place.
Yeah, but he got lost too, so he wasn't even that good.
He an A for effort.
Right.
I'm giving him a participation trophy Monday in October. How about that?
He showed up. He showed up in the Caribbean, I think, and thought he was in India. So, he went the wrong way. He took a real bad turn at one point, it sounds like.
Well, if Neil Armstrong said the N-word a lot, I'd still think walking on the moon is a fucking big deal. We don't celebrate Neil Armstrong.
Yeah.
We do celebrate man on the moon.
Yeah.
And from all we know, Neil Armstrong wasn't liberal with the N-word.
Well, I think Buzz Aldrin has a real issue with
my
race.
nephew
Michael
went
Collins
to
is a real bigot. I just made a Michael Collins reference. Nothing. Never gets any credit.
But no, he doesn't. He's the fucking Uber. He's the Uber driver for the mission.
Dude's fucking floating around waiting for these guys to get done with their shenanigans on the moon, and we don't even talk about him.
And pardon my language, but did Michael Collins even get puss after they got back on Earth?
Oh, come on. What kind of they were all married.
Right. Yeah, right. You went to the moon.
Well, the problem also with Michael Collins was that he was in a vessel with guys with the names Buzz Aldrin and Armstrong. Like, if Michael Collins would have been able to come up with a better stage name, we would have definitely remembered it.
Vin Diesel.
Yeah. Yes. He'd have been huge if that was his name.
But I guess that's how I would articulate the Columbus thing, because to me, it still represents some major historical thing. It's maybe a statue with just 1492 on it instead of Columbus. I don't know. But why did I bring? Oh, because but then when you're reading, and of course, this goes against what I'm saying, potentially, when you're reading about the real histories of these individuals that got statues in the South, and that there are people defending those.
Yeah.
If you're defending those, and somebody could easily say to me, like, clearly, JL, you've only seen like the Gerard Depardieu Columbus movie, and that's it, because you're speaking ignorantly on the horrible things Columbus did. I would say you're right. But you won't find me out defending a Columbus statue or a day off from, like, I know enough to be like, I certainly know it's not worth me fighting over to protect.
Right. I don't even understand that. The idea that, and I'm as Italian as they come here in America. Certainly my wife is. And I just, I don't know. I just don't get hung up on that kind of stuff. I think it's bizarre. I think it's a weird thing to get,
But the people who get hung up, like the stuff in our more immediate history.
Yeah, the Knights of Columbus. They're like 80.
But I'm like in going back to this Wilmington's Lie book, like when you read a detailed history of these people, and then you see the statues were put up, only the modern day people are coming up with some sort of, it's a historical, it's tradition, it's history, it's this. Yeah. And you're like, but in no phase until you decided that you hated Democrats being woke, was there ever a moment where this was like some sort of beneficent act of historical preservation? Right. They were horrible people. They executed black people. They basically took over government in North Carolina for 2 generations through fear and unconstitutional means and terrorism. Then they put up statues to say, remember these people? Well, don't forget, because it's not history. It's like putting a fucking pit bull in front and going, don't fucking mess with us. Remember what these guys did. We want to let you know we are protecting them, not you. And then you get to like 2015 and it's like, do not take down this statue that has never had anything but a horrible terrorist connotation, because that's anti-history and too woke. You have to, like, in the very least, if somebody at least said in the book, some of these interviews was like, I've never really thought about it, but from what I hear, it's probably not worth defending. That would be kind of hey, I haven't paid attention, but I know that guys who massacred black people because they were racist and terrible shouldn't be defended. I don't know the details, but it sounds like if people want it down, it's okay by me. But you have so many people that defend it and will say, oh, no, this is I never owned slaves. I have black friends and it's part of our history. What? It's like saying to somebody, like, next to the AIDS quilt, you should also have a statue of Roy Cohn.
I'm going to end it right there. J.L. Cauvin, that is... Roy Cohn was gay. Anyway.
No, but horrible to gay people.
Worst guy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you as always, and I can't wait to see you next weekend.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, J.L. Cauvin. Go check him out right now. I told you the dates earlier, jlcauvin.com, but you can see him this Friday in York, Pennsylvania. He's going to be in Princeton, New Jersey. He's going to be in Michigan in middle of November, as well as Syracuse in late November, the 23rd, and then in Mamaroneck, New York in December. Check out all those dates. Follow him on Twitter. Subscribe to him on YouTube. Listen also, I should have mentioned, his 2 great podcasts that he hosts. Every Tuesday, Righteous Prick. Every Wednesday, it's Making Podcasts Great Again. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you today. Show number 700. No fanfare. It's just another show. Just another show. Not my best, not my worst, but a pretty good show that we turned in today, folks. Couldn't do it without you. Couldn't do it without you. I don't know who this character I'm doing is, but I'm just telling you, I couldn't do it without you. Go to standupwithpete.com right now to support the show. Become a subscriber and hang out with us on Thursday nights. How about it, huh? I like this guy. I really do. I think I'm going to stay being this guy for the rest of the night. I love you guys. You were here, I'd give you a bro hug. Hug you. Yeah, I would pound you in the back a little bit. And then we would sit down. We would have a sandwich together. But you're not here. It's just me in a shed, alone, talking, still. Hurry, John Carroll. Take us away, brother.
Very friendly audience. Well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.